first I want to apologize for my beautiful soft French accent. And dear colleagues, first I want to thank Madame the President of the National Assembly for being kind enough to welcome us in this noble establishment. It's a great pleasure to welcome you from 18 countries. First, I want to introduce Mr. Karl-Heinz Bons, President of the Deutscher Feuerwehrverband, and Jean-Paul Boslan, President of the French National Firefighter Association.
Members of Parliament, thank you for welcoming us here in the National Assembly. Mr. President of my dear Olivier, President of the European Federation, members of the different delegations and rescue missions, dear presidents of European firefighters representations, dear representatives of the different delegations, my dear colleagues, I am deeply proud, and we are deeply proud together, and we feel united to stand before you today. I stand before you as the President of the French Firefighters Federation for the opening of the very first European Firefighters Summit here at the heart of Paris. Allow me, first and foremost, to extend my warmest thanks to our partner, the German Firefighters Federation. We've been working hand in hand, and we've been proud to organize this flagship event. This gathering, symbolizing not only friendship, but also German and French cooperation, but it also embodies our joint will to be stronger together at the service of our fellow citizens. We share the same commitment across Europe. This sentence echoes specifically today as we are gathered here to make the voice of European firefighters heard in all its diversity, in all its strength. Our mission, Beyond Borders, is driven by an unwavering commitment for safety, rescue, and solidarity. I wish for this summit and these lively topical discussions that we will have today will reinforce our joint positions while building the pillars of this European collaboration. This model is a well-tried model at the European level and from a solidarity point of view. It is a well-tried model as part of all of our countries. Firefighters are becoming the very last public healthcare link in our regions. They tirelessly assist suffering people, providing emergency relief. There's another similarity. Many countries in the Euro area use civic involvement, and it is a reality through the volunteering firefighter status. Volunteering is the cornerstone of these organizations, and it guarantees an efficient and human response to crises and the needs of our people. However, The Matzak judgment made by the Court of Justice of the European Union brings us against a major challenge. This case law could turn civic commitment overall into a paid trade, jeopardizing volunteering in France and thus across the whole of Europe. We are at a decisive turning point for the future of civic commitment, the cornerstone of any democracy, social cohesion, and regional solidarity. Together, we must assess the risks of such legal development on our volunteers and voluntary servants. This situation occurs against a backdrop in which emergency service workload is increasing. It is exacerbated by a significant increase of wildfires and floods across Europe. That is the reason why we call upon, in 27 European languages, the European Commission, European members of Parliament, and the European governments to take heed of how important civil protection is, and we invite them to defend this model more than ever. In this spirit of reinforced cooperation, we are also deeply proud to think together of the future Civil Protection Erasmus program, a new tool to promote and foster the exchange of knowledge, skills, and best practices among our countries. This initiative will mark a milestone in our European collaboration by strengthening bonds and improving our collective efficiency. Our role as firefighters is evolving in light of climate change, because it is a reality and it brings us against new unprecedented challenges. We are facing the direct consequences of global warming, which requires a constant adaptation in our skills and our intervention response strategies and our equipment. As firefighters, we are the frontline witnesses of the impacts of climate change, which bestows upon us a greater responsibilities in terms of awareness raising and prevention of environmental risks. European solidarity is important, and it cannot be underestimated in the area of civil protection. I would also like to extend my warmest and deepest and heartfelt gratitude to the National Assembly for inviting us as part of this iconic venue. The Maison des Sapeurs-Pompiers de France, the French firefighters' house, is your house too, and it will forever be open to you. Together, let's make this summit the starting point of a new era, the era of a cooperation, of increased cooperation for civil protection, an era of unwavering solidarity and renewed commitment. Thank you to you all for your commitment, your passion, and your dedication. Together, we are stronger.
Ja, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, Ehrengäste aus der Politik und aus der Verwaltung, liebe Kollegen.
Dear guests, dear colleagues, dear comrades, all the firefighters from the 18 countries of Europe, I am delighted to be able to say that it was quite a feat to all be together here in Paris in order to prepare the path to the future. And you can believe me, this will be good for all of us. Climate change and wars are a threat that our society had never seen. Forest fires, floods are covering regions. There are conflicts with violence in which intervention teams are also victims. European firefighters must face all these new challenges, and we do not stop at the borders of the countries. The firefighters of the European member countries are protecting people inside and outside of the European Union, all of the citizens, wherever they live. There are many examples of this assistance. There were some international interventions in Sweden, in France, in Greece, but also in Germany. There were French units deployed in Germany to help us in order to create dikes, and this was really a great help for us. More than 2.7 million people are ready to commit 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to serve as firefighters. Firefighters are really part of the architecture of security in a European-wide context. Today, as fire service organizations, we stand side by side to secure our future. We have the Federation of the Firefighters who are here today to talk about the best possible protection for our emergency services and our population. We need to work together, learn from each other, and reach our goal together. Our goal is really to have a high-level political meeting in Brussels this fall, between the 21st and the 23rd of October. And in order to prepare this meeting, we would like to work from the center of the European Union in order to create a confederation of the Fire Service Association to best represent our interests. The emergency services, the firefighters, are our top priority. There are no state interests playing a role here. The countries that are hit by major disasters are often overwhelmed and cannot act in appropriate measure. This is why a coordinated response at the EU level is absolutely key to ensure that aid helps and gets where it needs to be and to avoid the duplication of effort. This EU civil protection mechanism is a fundamental basis within and outside of our community. The firefighters associations are asking for an early, active, and sustained involvement in all matters relating to the mechanism, the EU civil protection mechanism. This is the reason for which it is important to be represented in Brussels. We are very grateful for the support of the CTIF, which is our new confederation. We don't want to cast a shadow on them. We just want to give more access at the European level. We want to act increasingly fast, and because there are less and less qualified personnel, it is important to act to recognize the education, the training, the uniform leave of absence and social security, and the driving license law for the firefighters. Being together here in Paris with more than 50 representatives from fire services throughout Europe, this sends a strong signal for our future cooperation. Many thanks to the French Firefighters Federation under President Bosselon for organizing this event. Thank you very much.
Dear colleague, the seconds we are going to begin this afternoon on this European Summit Firefighter have several objectives. First, I want to thank all the colleagues who are coming from the 18th country: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Republic of Cyprus, Czech Republic, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Portugal, Romania, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. Thanks to come here for this first summit. First, it's important for us to discuss. We are going to have many round tables. We have several objectives. The first is to face with the climate change. What we have to organize now, how we have to be organized as the firefighters. We have different problems also with, as we said, with the volunteering of firefighters. And we are also to face with different problems of regulation and to put it all these things in the perspective of the next European election in June. The central point of this discussion is to be able to establish a common position of all European firefighters regarding the European institution, the Working Time European Directive, and its application in the context of the civil protection, and more particularly with the volunteer firefighters. A strict application of this directive, as we know, could weaken the civic commitment of several million of volunteer firefighters within the European Union. Our work, our challenge, is to offer our authority solution to save volunteering, save the organization of firefighters in Europe to deal with all the effects of the climate change that we are facing. Now, this afternoon, there will be three round tables. The first on climate change, how to adapt our civil protection system. The second on this central point of the volunteering firefighters and the application of the European Directive of the Working Time. And finally, a question: is there a need for an European civil protection force? We have different speakers. We will come from all the European countries: Swedish, German, Spanish, Belgian, Finnish, and the presence of the representative of FAU and the CTIF. Tomorrow we will have a second working day, trying to draw the perspective and all the issue within the additional problem of the European regulation faced with the firefighters' activity, for example, the driving license for fire trucks. And at the end, tomorrow, the joint declaration signature together. And to begin, it's a great pleasure to introduce Mr. Julien Marion, the Director General of the French Civil Protection. Thanks.
Mesdames et messieurs les députés,
Ladies and gentlemen, members of parliament, Mr. Olivier Richaud, Mr. President, Mr. Chair of the Coordination of the European, the heads of the President of the Association of Firefighters, and Mr. Jean-Paul Bousselon. I want to tell you all the pleasure that I have to be with you today at the National Assembly for the opening of this first European Summit of Firefighters, which is co-organized by the National Federation of the Sapeurs-Pompiers de France and the Deutscher Feuerwehrverband. As head of civil protection and gestion of and management of a crisis, it is a pleasure to see representatives of our 18 countries to start and to continue beyond these 2 days important work, to think, to have common intentions and collaborations. My presence amongst you, ladies and gentlemen, is a sign of the interest that this government, and especially the Minister of the Interiors and the Overseas Territories, is giving to your work. I also want to thank the National Assembly to welcome us for this first working day. It makes a lot of sense, and it makes sense that these discussions take place here, that in these halls that welcome the representatives of the nation, because we'll be talking a lot about citizenship and volunteering for the common good. So, Mr. Jean-Paul Bousselon, I want to really recognize your federating initiatives and thank you all for dedicating some of your time to the work that we're going to be doing over the next 2 days. The first issue will be the question of the voluntary service faced with the threat of the working time directive to have a better model, and you will question the fact of having a specific directive for civil protection. On this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you that the French government has had the opportunity to speak several times, and recently, about a few meters from here, in the National Assembly, through the voice of the Minister of the Interior and the Overseas Territory, Mr. Gérald Darmanin. Here I'm talking about the French model. It relies on the daily commitment of 250,000 peoples, civilian, military, and 198,000 voluntary firefighters who participate fully and fundamentally at the richness and the complementarity of the strength. Here I talk about the richness and the complementarity. These are not just slogans. It is a reality, an operational reality, and it allows us to be present in exceptional circumstances that we checked over the last several months in the Pas-de-Calais, in Libya, in New Caledonia, in Canada, where I'm going to be going with the Prime Minister, heading to with the Prime Minister to sign a protocol of help to fight against the forest fires. And we have varied resources that are very rich and that we can mobilize in very diverse conditions. The Minister of the Interior and the government have really wanted to preserve this volunteering, which is at the heart of our civil protection model, and they're going to continue to have measures to continue to support the specificity of the French firefighters, whose civic commitment is not akin to work. So it would be particularly interesting to look at how volunteering is working in the various countries of the Union to give ourselves new inroads for thoughts to guarantee the sustainability of voluntary firefighting that allows us to face daily accidents, but also the crisis that we see all over the planet. The second issue that you have selected to organize your debates concerns the necessity to have a common European civil security force. Indeed, we can question ourselves legitimately on the best collective response to face the consequences of natural disasters that do not have any borders. It is important to remind that European tools already exist and that they have demonstrated over time how relevant they were. In October 2001, the European Union has placed the MPCU to improve the prevention and the preparation and meeting these disasters. 35 countries are participating in the ECPM, which has met more than 700 requests for assistance within and without the borders of the EU. The ECPM is European solidarity in action to serve the populations. It is Europe that is working, and we are very numerous here to wonder why it is not something that is not better known and recognized. Beyond the ECPM, we have several tools. The ERCC, the European Response Coordination Center, that mobilizes reserves and expertise. The rescue mechanism that makes possible the funding by the Union of additional national means, and I could go on and on about the examples. During the French presidency of the EU, a little less than 2 years ago in 2022, France has really had the first meeting between the heads of our training schools, because we had decided to put our operational doctrine at the head of this management of these civilian crises. France has also pushed to endorse the conclusions of the Council for Citizen Commitment and the impact of climate change on the EU. I've read these conclusions all over again, and they speak a lot for themselves, and they encourage us to go even further in the recognition of the specificity of volunteering. France will continue to encourage any approach that aims to better recognize at the European level the specificity of volunteering, and especially in the field of civil protection. It won't be able to be alone here. Like me, you know how complicated the decision-making process is within the EU. You understood that France supports all of the European initiatives that meet the growing needs for civil protection for our populations. In line with the EU, we organize interoperational training with our pilots. In 2024, we're going to host European firefighters to work on the pre-positioning for the forest fire campaign. And Mr. President, you mentioned Erasmus. We need to go even further. Erasmus is also a great example of the Europe that is working well for its populations. So a lot has been done, but a lot remains to be done. A lot remains to be done because the crises are multiplied. They are more intense, more diverse. It was reminded by the president who spoke before me. On top of the natural disasters, we have crises that are derived from armed conflicts. So when we talk about extending the EPCM can be raised, the identification of these European structures can question you on the pertinence of having a common European civil security force. And I believe that your work will let us know if it's relevant to go along this trajectory. France will always be favorable for the EPCM to help, provided the member states remain free in their commitments. This is why you can count on the full support of the government in this important debate, which has a finality that is going to reinforce the existing schemes. We must plan ahead for climate change and really place the protection of European citizens at the heart of what we do. This is the spirit that Mr. Gérald Darmanin, the Minister of the Interior, has had to open this broad field of thinking to evolve the French model of civil protection. This will be launched recently, and it will look at foreign experience, and especially the European experience, And this summit is the opening salvo for this. So I wish you all to tap into your collective intelligence to work and practice together. Have a great seminar.
We are going to begin the first table ronde with Karl-Heinz is already there, Jean-Marc Bedoni also, Anders Cederberg from Sweden, come, thank you, and Emilio Duch Ramos from Spain, thank you, come here.
C'est bon, Eric?
Is it okay for you, Eric? Well, so as you've been invited by the General Director of Civil Protection, we should be all hands on deck. So that is my responsibility today. I should launch this panel discussion on a topic that is more than universal, because civil protection risks do not know any borders. But I do know one of them that doesn't know any borders and that cross borders, and that also affects our countries, within our countries, and that is wildfires. We are collectively facing these risks, and we should be prepared for it. And I'm sure that many of you could be standing here before you today, just like me, to share one observation that I want to make. You only need a pair of eyes and be operational, be in the field, to be convinced that climate change is indeed a reality and that will have a sustainable impact on our daily tasks. The observation is not one that I've made myself. It has been made by scientists. Scientists have been raising the alarm for years. The IPCC have drafted several reports, and they tend to say that wildfires will intensify in terms of frequency and burnt surface area, burnt woodland. So that is the conclusion of those reports, and we can see that there are more and more wildfires and that they are more and more intense and frequent. The forecasts by 2050 show that the burnt woodland could increase by 80%. These conclusions, what are they due to? Of course, climate change and its direct consequences. Going backwards will be hard, and so we will have to adapt for the future. We are seeing more and more surface areas that are combustible. So this also has an impact in the agricultural world. This is an area that is in decline. And vegetation and other areas are becoming more and more sensitive to wildfires. The forest biodiversity is also impacted by wildfires and climate change. We are noticing it. And there are also several behaviors that impact our forests. And nowadays, some of our forests are totally dry, and it aggravates the situation of forests. Our forests are dying, and they can only be replaced by other forest species years later, it increases the wildfire risks. When those agricultural lands are no longer used by men for environment protection purposes or for economic purposes, there are other issues, and that is accommodation or buildings being built. And finally, and we've noticed that as well, we've all noticed that the fire behavior has changed. We tend to talk about mega fires, extreme fires, unprecedented fires, but what does it mean? I think we should find a common definition for extreme fire or mega fires, because it will require a specific operational response, and we are not fully prepared to such a response. Preparing the country to climate challenge. So there are more and more risks. The fighting means cannot be the same. At some point, we will reach our full capacities. So we will have to work on other risk factors to make sure that our forests are more resilient in the future. So we need to preserve our forests, our land, our cultures, and this will require a sustainable urban planning. So that will be another obstacle. So we need to work across departments as well. We cannot dismiss the work of our foresters, and they cannot ignore the work of firefighters, etc., etc. So without an overarching vision, forests will not be saved. So we will have to work on prevention and the forest fire fight together. Without prevention, the fight cannot be efficient. Of course, we rely on legislation to make our regions more resilient in light of wildfires. And when legislation does exist, make sure it is enforced. Working on the different surface areas as part of urban planning. When apartment buildings are being built, we need to make sure that wildfire risks are taken into account, and that they do not only rely on operational forces to defend them in case of a crisis. And finally, I think this is part of the discussions that we will have, and that is civic engagement or civil commitment. No matter what form or shape it takes, it can be volunteer firefighters, or it can be any other role. We need to raise awareness and make sure climate change is a reality for everyone. Preparing the world to climate change. I'm talking here to operational forces. There are certain fundamental rules, and I will rely on what's done in the French doctrine, but I'm sure this observation applies everywhere. I'm sure if you've got some experience in firefighting, you will realize that those 4 principles are obvious. Preventing wildfires from occurring, that is rule number 1. Without any wildfire, that is better. How can we reach that? By raising awareness, educating, and identifying the root causes. Why has there been those wildfires? So working on the message conveyed to the greater public, deterring, these are words we should be familiar with. Rule number 2, the smaller the fire, the better we are and the more efficient we will be. So we need to work on urban planning, early warning, early detection as well of fires. So We shouldn't ignore such tools because it will help us be more efficient. And then rule number 3, massive fight and rapid response. It requires means. It is costly, but believe me, when you compute the ratio between the massive commitment when a fire started and the cost of a magnifier, I'm sure the ratio is in favor of rapid response. And once the fire is launched, we know that it is harder and harder to take action. So we'll have to organize. So rule number 4 is to prevent a disaster using a defensive strategy and have an air-ground strategy as well, and air-ground coordination, so that the means deployed are complementary, because it will be decisive in the fight against fire. If all of those rules haven't been applied and all have failed, we've all noticed one thing: we keep talking about our failures instead of talking of our victories, although there are many victories. On a daily basis, our firefighters do achieve victories, but unfortunately there are failures over huge surface areas. But when we are experiencing a failure, we should study it, see how we can prevent errors made in the past from reoccurring. And then I think this is the goal of such a conference, and this is the goal of different works that we are carrying out. We need to promote the exchange of best practices. There's not one truth. It is only collectively that we will reach some kind of an answer. Facilitating operational support, being efficient rapidly. These are common goals that we need to achieve. And if we work collectively, we might reach them. To do so, what do we need? We need men and women to serve. So we are going back to the topic of our discussion. Without those men and women serving, we will not manage and not achieve this fight against climate change. These men and women serve us to rise to those challenges. The current headcount do not enable us to face the current challenges. That is a certainty. So we need to rely on multi-year HR plans. Let's protect civic engagement. We need to make sure forest protection is part of environmental priorities. As soon as the crisis detection occurs, we should take heed of general mobilization as a citizen response to climate change. Let's not be afraid of using such words, because this is how we'll be successful. Trained, qualified people, and an educated population to the risks. In light of powerful fires, we need to rely on trained and qualified people. And this knowledge needs to be shared. And the security and safety of our population should also be a priority on our agenda. I will make a list of some weapons that we can use to fight together, but there will be other panel discussions, and I'm sure you will enrich this list with your experience. So a few examples: better identifying the root causes of wildfires, and in spite of a crackdown, we need to raise awareness among the population. We need to work on awareness raising as soon as we've identified the root causes. Better understanding wildfires, extreme fires, mega fires. What is the definition? Working on research, metrology. These are words that you are familiar with. Anything related to observation, scientific analysis, we'll have to work with this in the future. And then we'll be able to share draw conclusions, feed into our experience sharing. Let me repeat this. Wildfires require an overarching approach. We are in the fight, others are in prevention. We need to work hand in hand. We cannot dismiss what others are doing. Distributing the different means to increase our capacities, we are aware of this. At some point, we will have to find other means solidarity needs to be a reality within our borders, but also beyond our borders. So from a European perspective, but also from an international perspective, reinforcement is being done from a preventative point of view, depending on the risk analysis, and that is one of the answers to our questions. And we'll have to fight better with less water. Water resources will also decline, so let's start thinking of this and see how we can act in the future. And of course, we'll need the solidarity of the different countries. A custom-made information system that will help to detect and inform. This will be part of the weaponry, but I'm sure you've got other issues using innovation, drones, new sensors. Why not a satellite, a European satellite? Maybe I'm digressing here. To help locate the start of wildfires in the massifs, in the mountains, etc., etc. Why not using such tools to the benefit of civil protection? Because it is, by essence, universal. And if there is one universal area, that is this one. We almost carry the same symbol, this triangle and this circle. We have shown that we can do universal things, and I think this is along those lines that we should continue to move on and move forward. I think I've reached the end of my 5 minutes. I've gone over time. I'm sorry. Thank you for your attention. I've only opened the discussion. You are here to show your experience, to enrich this list. And I'm sure that our wealth come from the collective effort. And I'm sure that such an initiative should encourage us to build closer bonds. Thank you for your attention.
Ja, ich wurde gebeten, Diskussion etwas aus deutscher Sicht zu berichten. Und da muss ich
I was asked to participate and give a German perspective. And before I start, I wanted to explain how the German system works. In Germany, we talk about civil protection when we are defending ourselves. So civil protection in Germany means that Germany is attacked and needs to defend itself. This is the German definition of the words civil protection. We have other definitions. I'm thinking about the definition of the protection faced with natural disasters. These are events that are occurring at the level of the Länder. Germany has 16 Länder, and here we talk about the protection against disasters. As president of our federation, I like to talk about the protection of the population. When we talk about the protection of the population, we cover all of these fields. Speaking about the strengths and weaknesses of the German system, we have one weakness which is considered by others as a strength, and it's the federalism in Germany. We have 16 Länders, as I said earlier. Bremen with 900,000 inhabitants. In Westphalia, we have about 18 million inhabitants, and each Länder must face and all of the tasks that are involved with protecting the population. In Germany, we have about 1.1 intervention forces. 90% of them are volunteers. In Germany, we also have 95,000 people who are helping for the technical aspect. So you might know the blue vehicles in Germany that are providing support in case of an earthquake. For instance, they were in Turkey. We can find them elsewhere in the world when there are crises. In Slovakia, for instance, when there was an issue with electricity. We also have the emergency services. Here we talk about the auxiliary organizations. There's the Red Cross, but there's also others of them. We've got 100 to 200,000 people who are volunteers. In Germany, the situation changed dramatically in the past by looking at climate change. We've had to carry out interventions that we've never done before. For instance, we had natural disasters such as floods. This was mentioned all over Europe. There were more than 160 people who died in this valley. And even some members of these intervention teams died. And we wondered, how is it possible with this technical mass of people and intervention vehicles? How was it possible to fail in such a way? Ever since, we tried to work more closely between all of the Länders, because every country has its own fire protection and disaster management legislation. We don't even wear the same uniforms in Germany. We want a system where we can see one another, and when we have a joint management, and when the forces of intervention in Bavaria know that they can rely on their colleagues in another Länder. We have tried to create this according to what we do on a European level. The challenge is not only because of floods. We've had storms near the Baltic Sea. This is also an event that we have every 2 years. Normally the Baltic Sea is very quiet, and all of a sudden there was this storm that destroyed ships. And so we've really asked all of our intervention teams to help. We also have forest fires that had an intensity that we had only seen around the Mediterranean until then. So we have fires that we had never seen before. In Brandenburg, there were fires that forced our firefighters to sacrifice their vehicles because they could no longer access the place where these fires were burning. They're fires that jump borders into the Swiss Saxony. There were fires, and we've had to turn to Czech firefighters to help. And this was only possible because we've cooperated before these events. We are convinced in Germany that it's necessary to cooperate more throughout Europe. The civil protection authorities exist also in Germany. These authorities sign agreements at a level of the ministries. It does not happen for the firefighters. There are agreements, there are rules, but the firefighters are always the last ones to be informed. So we feel that as firefighters, we need to talk, we need to meet, because we know the skills that we have. We are not political in our nature. We can talk openly, we can gauge the strengths and the weaknesses of the ones and the others. And for this reason, I think it's very important for us to cooperate more closely, a little bit like what we see between the Länders in Germany. I believe it's the right path, and especially the right time to start. Earlier, we spoke about resilience with our civil protection authority. We've signed a cooperation agreement allowing the firefighters to intervene in schools, but also in retirement homes, to explain how a fire should be handled. We want to inform the population and show them how they can protect themselves. People call when they have 10 centimeters of water in the cellar, they call the firefighters saying, can you please come and pump the water? And this happened. And you also have people who died because of this. So each homeowner needs to know the measures that they need to take in case of a disaster. They need to know how they can waterproof their windows and their doors. It used to be the case, but people forgot about that over the past 20 or 30 years. People just say, well, I pay my taxes, the firefighters are going to come, it's going to last 12 minutes, but it's not going to work over the long term. We can notice in terms of first response, we've talked about this, we have issues for doctors. People are calling 15 a year and there's an ambulance that is coming. This doesn't work like that in Germany anymore. So we have an aspect on which we need to think so that the population takes its own responsibilities. These are the first explanations that I wanted to give concerning Germany. Alerting the population is another topic. When we had the events in the Acht Valley, we were told that the population was not informed. The water arrived and the population was not aware, and this is why people died. But that was not the case. The population was informed, but the means were not maybe the right one. In Germany, we had until 1989 sirens and means for alert. Then we had the fall of the wall and everything was beautiful. We were all brothers, and so we've taken apart civil protection and the sirens, and today we're trying to rebuild the sirens because we have a really hard time warning the population of possible dangers. And before I wrap up, I wanted to underscore that I hope we will be able to meet frequently to have these open discussions, to talk about civil protection, but also about firefighters, about our issues, and so that we can do everything so that everything works well for our populations. Thanks to you very much.
Thank you very, very much to be invited here to this summit. I'm very honored and proud to be here. And I'm already look forward to the next meeting, maybe in Brussels. I think something like that. My experience of fire in the forest is not so big, but in my role, like right now as a president of the National Association of Swedish Firefighters, I have to work on this level before I'm working from the underside. But my experience, I remember early in the 90s, we have a big fire in the Baltic states, in the Litauen, and the capital of Riga was threatened by the fire in the forest. And they have no tools, nothing to protect the fire, the civilian, because the Russian forces, they stole everything. They stole the fire trucks, the pumps, the hose, and so on. So the civilian, they take trucks and drive the civilian out to the forest, and they dig with shovels. They dig up the roads from the tree, and they take axe and cut the roots on the tree and overturn the tree. So, you know, they have a hard work. But my experience, together with 20 other fire officers from Sweden, was to help the people in the Latvia as expert on fire in the forest. So when we go into the Baltic states, I'm talking to a friend. He was with me, another captain in the fire department, and I asked him, "What do you know about fire forest?" Nothing. So it was the start about my experience of fire in the forest. So I'm not sure right now if I shall talk. Okay, I can talk on. Yes. Okay. Yes, in Sweden.
If you want to.
In Sweden, it's a small country in the northern part of Europe. It's very cold. They have a lot of snow in the winter time, and we also have very warm summers. That's a problem right now when the climate effect. But right now in Sweden, I think we work very, very similar as the other countries in Europe. We have a new collective agreement for emergency situations. For example, fire in the forest, you can have oil on the water, and so on. So the agreement means that you can take the civilian people, the farmer, the nurse, or the military forces, the home guard forces, is old men. They have exercises every weekend, and I think they have about 70,000-80,000 right now in Sweden. Maybe it's a secret number of soldiers, but I'm not sure. But we can use these forces and all civilian people in Sweden with this collective agreement, and they get paid from the agency. And we have agreement with no rules. We can work about 80-90 hours every week to protect the fire or another emergencies. So that's a start in Sweden about the climate effect. We have the agreement. I think it's a good start. In Sweden we have two big fire forests. The last 2 decades. I think the last one was for 6 years ago, and during that fire we got help from the neighbors in Europe, and we are very, very grateful for that. I think if we shall talk to each other, it means like that.
I have one question, if you want.
I'm not sure because thank you to be sitting here, but yeah, I'm not sure if I shall talk to him and we have questions to each other or.
As you want, I have a question to you. One of the problems we get is that every country is now adapting its system to face climate change. How can we share this organization? Because when Spanish, Swedish are changing the different way of their civil protection system, maybe it's very important that we can share it, because what is happening in the south of Spain maybe will arrive in the south of France in a few days, and in the north of Sweden in the next. Do you share? Do you look for what the organization is dealing in the other countries?
Yes, we will look very much to another countries in the European Union, how you work, because you have a lot of experience about fire forest and how you organize your forces, your firefighters, and so on, and the civilian. Sweden, we have a very cold winters, and we not have a lot of fires during the summertime, but we have 2 big fires during 2 decades. So my experience of fire in the forest is very low, but right now in Sweden we work to understand how we shall work, how we shall organize us, and I think a good start is the collective agreement. We can use the civilian, the community, everything what you want to protect the fire. So I think it's the right way to go, but I think this kind of summit is very, very good. It's a good start to learn.
Vielleicht kann ich einen Satz.
Thank you.
So I will allow myself to jump in. The microphone is, Mr. Benz is not. I remember that I was in Sweden on vacation. It was north of the polar circle. It was with a German unit. It was north of Oslo, and we were looking at the firefighting in the forest, and the weather was above 30 degrees. I remember that the organization with the civil protection, with the firefighters, and with the military units had worked very well, and that really impressed the Germans.
Thank you very much. I'm proud to hear that, but we have a lot to learn of each other, so I think this kind of summit is very, very important. So I wish that we should meet again during this year, maybe next year, but we have to learn about the fire forest, and it's not, and everything is not about the fire. It's about the education of firefighter, the protection for firefighters, what kind of gear we use. In Sweden we use gear so very, very warm because we have winter half time of the year. We have same protection, same gear during the summertime when we protect the fire. So we have a lot of small problems how we shall protect the fire and protect the firefighters with equipment and so on.
May I introduce my friend from Spanish?
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Emilio Duque. I'm General Manager of the Firefighters Consortium of Gran Canaria. I'm here on behalf of the Spanish Consortium of Firefighters Association. With respect, when I heard speaking the President of the German Federation before, I thought I was back in Spain. because our system is very similar to German system, but Spanish, way more complex than Germans, as everybody knows. And I will explain why. Here we are talking about wildfires, mainly. In Spain, wildfires are not direct responsibility of firefighter services, a responsibility of the Ministry of Environment. So when we have a wildfire, we have on one side firefighters fighting against the wildfire, and wildfire firefighters fighting the same wildfire. But I think that in this weakness is also the strength of the system, and I will explain why. I will speak about the model for Gran Canaria, but as an example of how it works in Spain and why we think it's successful, but it must be improved. And which is the role that the European Union and the institutions and all the firefighter services that are here can play in that game, if we can say it that way. In Gran Canaria, we have reached, we say in Spain that the reality is stubborn. And that's so. Why? Because in a natural way, we can say like that, when we have a wildfire incident, first of all, the average of wildfire incidents in Gran Canaria is about 5,000, 6,000 a year. Of these 5,000, 6,000 a year, only one every 5 years, it turns into a great wildfire. I think it's a rate of success that is good. How we have improved the system to know which kind of service, how to work, and how to be more efficient in that incident. In a natural way, as we said. In what are we specialized firefighters? Urban structural incidents. The role have assumed the firefighter service of Gran Canaria is the fight in the build-up area, the interface areas, are the places where the forest is in contact with urban areas. That's the natural place to fight the wildfire for firefighters or traditional firefighters. The rest of the areas, the full forest areas, are fought with the wildfire firefighters. But I wanted to talk about something else. I think something more important, because it's related with the panel and it's related with the objective or the target of this summit. But I think it was necessary. When I heard the rest of the partners speaking, finally we're talking about common places, common issues, common problems. I think that the real challenge is every country with their own system has to have the capacity to call for a response of the rest of the European Union members, but also to organize, integrate, and have the capacity to coordinate and manage this response. A wide, a diverse, a complicated response, but I think it's possible to reach that target. We're talking about complex emergencies, climate change. What has changed? The climate change. Magnitude, intensity, frequency, the impact. The effects in terms of time are longer. The recovery time is longer. The effect on population is longer. So we need to be better coordinated, better integrated. We need norms and regulations, European norms and regulations. I think the directive is It's necessary, more than necessary, in order to respecting the self-organization and competencies of each country, be able to interoperate, be able to integrate each other. And when we put boots on the ground from different countries, be able to coordinate it. Communications are essential. The same protocols or similar is essential to have these tools, because in any other way we will fail for sure. And I think we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg with the climate change and their effects in emergencies. So I think it's time to make known our politicians and institutions the importance to boost, to improve our systems, and above all, more than technical capabilities, to give a better treatment to our firefighters, to the people that serves, and these tools of coordination and direction and management of emergencies. I think that's capital. That's all.
Thank you very much. I have a question. I have a question for my German friends. In France, we get now a big problem that with the climate change and the problem of the forest fire. Fire department in south of France get around 200 wide forest fire trucks. In the north of France, in the same area, with the same forest, there is maybe 20 forest fire trucks, because there is no risk for the moment, and with the climate change, we not have sufficient time to buy everything, and also the big issue is the finance. How do you manage the problem of finance in Germany? Because you have also to face with La Forêt Noire, with Schwarz, and to adapt your organization.
That is a very good question indeed. In Germany, let me say that firefighters operate in every municipality. So every municipality has their own firefighters for their own protective area. Beyond that, there's also the disaster protection, and I've told you about the differences. So these are the first response teams that take action at the district level. So the district is in charge of disasters, and they're in charge of first response team at a supra-regional level. There are also response teams that are equipped and that work at this supranational level as part of wildfires. They, of course, deal with financial issues. Some people are here to say, okay, I am a city, I do not need such response equipment, such equipment vehicles to fight against wildfires. And then we try to take action at the level of the federation. And here we talk about a widened protection system. So there are always new definitions to define new funding coming from the federation to the municipalities. We used to have sufficient funding, but since the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine, we have fewer financial means, and we are facing obstacles to implement such projects. We are aware that we should transform our vehicle compact. Usually we work with 18 tons vehicles that are fully equipped with 4,000 liters of water, for example, and we can use them in the cities, but also in industrial areas. But that is more complex in forests. So we are trying to find new equipments, and we are working along with the German government to make sure that there's not only 1,000 euros for the Bundeswehr, but also 10 billion for the response team, so that we can have the right equipment at our disposal. It's always difficult when talking about money and no one knows what to pay.
And question for my Spanish friends. The problem of south of France is also a problem of water. As Jean-Marc said, somewhere we don't find water to extinguish the fire. How do you deal it because the south of France is the north of Spain, and how do you deal it in Spain with the problem of water issue and for wildfires?
We deal with wildfires.
The problem of the water, do you...
Workers.
Yeah, because there is some place but that we can't find any waters to extinguish the fire. Do you stock some water? Do you bring with the water with some trucks?
Yeah. As the experience in Spain, we know one of the... I said before that we firefighters of the traditional firefighting services play a different role in wildfires, because Spanish tactics of wildfire firefighters are more based on tools and work in the forest and water. Water is used, but normally not in direct attack. As we said, direct attack is when you are fighting directly the source of the flames. Normally the attack is the indirect attack, as we said, that is preparing the places that is going to reach the front of flames in order to attack in that place, then with water and other available systems. So our system mainly is based on little or small teams or firefighters with tools supported by helicopters. That's the most powerful tool we can have in a wildfire. And urban firefighters are limited to fight the fire in the places I call the interface areas, that defending the towns, villages, and the places where the forest is in contact with the population areas, the populated areas. I don't know if I have answered. No, the water, as an example, wildfire firefighters, they have vehicles with water vehicles, pumps. They have pumps, but their pumps have a capacity of more or less 1,000 liters, because the attack is not based in water.
Thank you. One question for my Swedish friends. In 2022, there were some airplane. We came from Sweden to help us in France. And then we did, when we saw your airplane, it was air tractor. It was not Canadair. Do you know why you choose to have some air tractor instead of Canadair? Yes, air tractor.
Our resources in Sweden is not so big about when we talk about airplane and helicopters and so on. We have very small copters, and we need help from other countries, from Canada, from Spain, and so on. But I remember the last big fire in Sweden. We have fighter jets, and they dropped a lot of bombs over the fire and got under pressure, and the fire was stopped. So it works with a different thing to protect the fire. So But right now we are building up our own protection with airplanes and chopters and so on.
Is there any question in the assembly? No. Then thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for coming here.
Thanks to you.
Thank you. I'm not sure that we are going to have the coffee pause. We are going to stay there, and for the next speaking table with Christophe Marshall. No. And with on the voluntary firefighters. May I introduce? Sorry, I don't like the name. Francis Klaus from Belgium. Mais je te dis non. Petri Joatinen from Finland. And Petr Oslecek from FAU. Maybe I don't. Yes, come on.
So I'm pleased to open this second roundtable. Regarding the coffee break, it is reported to the next break will be after this intervention. So this panel will focus on the question of voluntary services, more specifically in the threat of the Working Time Directive, and the need to secure, protect, and enhance this model of volunteers. Let me introduce our panelists. So, first one is Commander Francis Klaus, who is currently leading the Director General Rescue Zone, covering the German-speaking community in Belgium. Is this correct? Yeah. The second panelist on my left is Petri Joatinen, Director of the Fire Brigade Services at the Finnish National Rescue Association, also called as SPEC. And the third panelist is a colleague, Petri. I am not so good. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. Ostelnik. Yes, Ostelnik. You told me, but member of the Federation of Fire Officers, FAU. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, and dedicated members of our audience, dear colleagues, welcome to this critical roundtable discussion on a subject that is at the heart of both our profession and our personal commitment to civil protection. The delicate balance between voluntary service and legislative frameworks, especially within the context of the European Working Time Directive. Today, we gather not just as professionals, but also as committed citizens from various corners of the European Union, united by our dedication to safeguarding our communities, our environment, and our shared heritage. This exceptional commitment, demonstrated by volunteer firefighters across the European Union, embody the highest ideals of civic engagement and community service. Their selfless dedication, offering their time and skills alongside their personal, family, and professional lives, represents a unique and unrivalable component of our civil protection capabilities. Volunteerism within fire and rescue services across Europe encompasses a diverse range of organizational structures. Some volunteers serve on a part-time basis in some countries, while others commit entirely as volunteers. Sometimes they have a small compensation for their engagement, sometimes nothing. In certain regions, volunteers fire brigades operate as local associations, in other countries as communal organizations, and in other countries as regional or even national services. Whatever the scope of their responsibility can vary significantly also in some countries. In some countries, like in France or in Belgium, the fire service, volunteers or professionals, are in charge of first aid and medical emergency services. In other countries, they only act as first responders. But whatever, this invaluable model of civic commitment is very important for day-by-day operations, but also, as we spoke together, in the scope of new threats and new disaster led by the climate disorder. So it's, in my opinion, and I hope you share this opinion, it's very important to protect and develop this volunteer involvement in the fire and rescue service. But this model of civic commitment faces significant challenges, notably by the European Directive, I mentioned it previously, the European Directive 2003/88 EC Working Time Directive. While this directive is well-intentioned and its aim is to protect workers, its potential implication for volunteerism within the fire and rescue services pose a profound threat to the substantiality of this essential service. The need for an adapted legal framework that recognizes and supports the specificity of the volunteer in civil protection has never been more important and urgent. Our discussions today is therefore centered of a pivotal question. How can we draft a specific directive on civil commitment to civil protection that both secures the commitment of volunteer firefighters and strengthens civil protection's capability across the European Union? This conversation is not merely academic. It's a call to action for the drafting of legislation that safeguards our ability to serve and protect our communities effectively. As we proceed, let's keep in mind the story and the day-by-day involvement of more than 3.5 million citizens, men and women, throughout Europe. They act as volunteer firefighters. They stand ready to serve our communities 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. Their commitment is not just to firefighting, but to build a safer, more resilient society. It's our responsibility to ensure that their dedication is met with a legal framework to protect, support, and value their contribution. I look forward to a fruitful and enlightening discussion with our esteemed panelists from Belgium, Finland, and FAU. So let's embark on this critical dialogue with the aim of shaping a future where the spirit of volunteers in civil protection is not just preserved but thrived. So I will launch a set of questions, and I will start with our first panelist, Commander Klaus. Could you explain briefly? Could you explain us briefly how your organization in Belgium integrates volunteer firefighters with professional teams, and what measures are in place to support these volunteers, both in their duty and in their personal commitments?
Okay. Hello. It's necessary for me to explain a little the organization in Belgium because since 2015 we are fusion in great zones, and before 2015 it was communal or regional fire services, and there were a lot of volunteers in the communal firefighting stations. And then since 2015, we are now 34, désolé. Je préférais le français, ça passera mieux. Nickel.
It's easier in French for me. So we switched to 34 rescue zones. And of course, there we had to merge all of our volunteers and professionals. At the time, there were a little bit less than 5,000 professional firefighters for 17,000 firefighters. The number of professionals has increased with the disappearance of the volunteer model. One of the issues is that the volunteers in Belgium don't have a work contract that exists as such, but they do have a status. And based on the status, a certain number of volunteers, you know about the Mazdak legal decision. It's the one that is used here, saying, well, because they need to be on call, because they need to be at the firefighting station within a certain time, it was considered as a working time, and this created a lot of problem in our organization. We had to think about how to solve this, and we moved to a system of availability. From a legislative perspective, we were told you cannot give them an order, you need to give them a time frame, and if they come, what are the constraints, what needs to be handled. In practice, it became very complicated to organize this, so we really have a constraint with regards to this working on-call time and how we're going to get our volunteers to come back. Today, there's still 10,000 firefighters in rural areas like ours. We're still revolving around 250 volunteers. We need them. They are not going out on intervention every day. If we needed to replace this by professionals, the costs would be tremendous. So the thought here about our safety zones is to encourage volunteering and to support volunteering by other means than by finances. So if you do that, you're getting closer and closer to working contract, and European legislation is such that it sets a working time. And again, Belgium is divided in 3 language part. This is why I also speak German, and I could have done this in German. There are different modes of proceeding. In French-speaking Belgium, there's more protection of the worker, and the problem is because we've got a European legislation, the interpretation in front of the court is in favor of the worker, because this European legislation leaves some space to the way in which we answer this question. So this is really the issue that we are setting. It's to find the right answer. If you can't give someone time for somebody to come and to make themselves available, if you cannot tell someone, if you're not coming, you will be sanctioned, you cannot organize anything. It is the absolute freedom, and it's the fact that you do everything that you want with the issues. So we've got a service to provide. I didn't want to frame it that way, but yes, it is the principle there. So it is important for us to frame this and to set this up with a coherent framework. So we are demanding a lot to have a European regulation that decreases the freedom of the jurisdiction. Because when you leave the space open for interpretation, that gives you the possibility to leave the various jurisdiction. This opens the doors. And, well, you know, in Belgium, all of the rescue areas don't have the same concerns. We have 2 or 3 rescue areas that were that are dragged in front of the court by volunteer firefighters. So Mazdak is just a start, but we really need to think about what we can do and what we cannot do, and what are the mandatory obligations that we need to give the volunteers. So I know this is not fully answering the question by saying what solutions you have, because we're currently developing these solutions. We're looking for them, and of course thinking about this from a European perspective is important for us, because it helps us to solve a certain number of issues.
Yes, you spoke about question of a financial question, but it's not only a financial question. What is important is to have a strong body of volunteers, and as many volunteers as possible. More specifically regarding this new threat we face every day. I have the same question for you, Petri. In Finland, how do you elaborate and how do you organize the integration of volunteers in fire and rescue services? And what are the measures and dispositions in place to support these volunteers, both in their duty and in their personal commitment? And also how the Working Time Directive threat or doesn't threat, I don't know, the volunteers in Finland.
First of all, I would like to thank you on behalf of our Finnish delegation by arranging this summit. Thank you, French firefighters, along with the Deutsche Feuerwehrbund. In Finland, I would say like 4 out of 5 our firefighters are volunteers or either part-timers. 4 out of 5. Every day they rescue those volunteers. We try to actually manage those volunteers and part-timers together. We call them as contract firefighters, because almost half of the volunteers also get some paid. And that is actually quite common. I would say that if you have like 1 dispatch per week, that is actually kind of hobby, so you don't need any compensation out of it. But if you have like 2, 3, 4 times per week, you have to get some compensation out of the missions. The Working Time Directive have effect in Finland, so that before the dispatch time was like 5 minutes, and we have to turn it up to 15 or 20 minutes because of the directive. And in some areas, we have hired professional firefighters because of that as well. So I would say that the issue is that we need professionals, we need volunteers, we need part-timers, and also we probably need the pop-up volunteers as well. So everybody is needed, and we actually made a questionnaire to our volunteers, and they said that they need actually a double amount of the volunteers. So more and more, because of the volunteerism is turning into professionalism. So there's more and more requirements, and the field is getting wider and wider. You have to rescue people from the heights. You have to rescue people inside the vehicles in traffic accidents. You have to have the CBRN capabilities, and among lots of different things. And I would say that we have turned into this question that how far can we lower the requirements, or not lower, but because it is actually the question of the level, that what can we ask from the volunteers. So we are nowadays thinking about these kind of issues. One thing I have to say is that we also made a study about this social return of investment, and we discovered that every euro that has been put it into voluntary firefighters turns out 12 times saved people lives or property, and so on. Was that enough, or?
Yes, if you have enough time, we'll have some more questions.
Okay.
So now, Peter, you are a member of the FAU board. Even if FAU represents more professional firefighters, in your opinion, in the opinion of FAU, what is the importance of volunteers in the fire and rescue services throughout Europe? And do you think that the working time directive is or is not a threat for volunteers?
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, thank you very much for inviting on this summit. It's a nice question. How it's look with the involving of the voluntary fire brigades in Europe? Because if I look in the middle of the Europe, I don't know what is your feeling about the middle of the Europe, but usually we say it's the Czech Republic. From different point of view, it can be difficult. But if I look to the Czech, we have the system which based on the history, because some 100 years we belong to the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy, and it started huge voluntarism. It means we have a lot of the volunteers in the Czech Republic, but since 1948 we were under influence from the Russia and the East countries. It started the centralization. It means the Czech Republic is the combination of the full-time firefighters or professional firefighters. I would like to use the full-time, part-time, and the volunteers, because all are the professionals. If you go to Austria, how is the involving of the voluntary firefighters? Because they have just the voluntary firefighters, they have just the 5-6 full-time firefighters. If you go to the Germany, the cities until 100,000, they have just the volunteers. The cities over, they have the full-time firefighters. It means there is the various systems in the Europe, and we need to say that we need to find the right way how to cooperate between the full-time and the voluntary time. There is no common solution because it's connected to the history, to the administration system, and so on. But generally, we need to set up the system for cooperation between the volunteers and full-time firefighters. Then also we need to create some condition for this work. It's just very briefly how we look to cooperation between the full-time, part-time, or voluntary firefighters. I just very briefly explain who we are as the Federation of European Fire Officer. We are the independent professional body of 24 European Fire Officer Association or State Fire Service. In our organization we have the UK and also the representatives from Norway. Our mission is to share and exchange knowledge to deliver the best life and fire safety to the citizens in Europe. And we would like to enhance the fire safety for citizens, improve firefighter safety, provide expertise for European bodies, and share good practice and support cross-border initiatives. This is the one of the points which we have the common, for example, with CTIF and other European organization. Some years ago, 2 years ago, we started with a new strategy, and we divide our activities in 3 streams. One is the voice. We discussed many years how to can improve or how to can speak on behalf of European firefighters with the European bodies. It's very difficult because the fire protection is not a part of European law, and there are no standards for fire prevention or fire protection. We just speak about the civil protection. It's very important, but it's very hard. And I think it's also very important to found a common voice to the European Parliament and to the Commission, because if we have 5, 6, 7 streams with the different things, it will be very difficult to persuade the members of the Parliament what is the best way. The second stream is the leadership or officer development program. We try to develop the new generation of the fire officer in the international context, and the last but not least, the exchange of expert and the knowledge, which is very important to find the way how to share the information, how to share the knowledge, because all of us have the same problems, and we found we try to find the own solution, but it's always better to find a way how to find a common solution for these problems. I will go back to the working time directive. Full time, because the first impact of the working time directive was to the full-time firefighters, because if you look to this directive and if you read it, probably you don't identify some problems, because it's very clear. And in 2003, nobody think that the working time directive can bring the problems to the firefighters. The problems made the implementation and the judgments of the European Court of the Justice. What can be the essential problems? It's based on the Mr. Jäger. I don't know what is the right pronunciation in the Germany, because it was probably the medical doctor somewhere in the Germany, which put on the court the problem. Okay, if I am in the on the working place, and if I am under the disposal of my employee, I want to that my employee calculate the all standby hours in working hours. It was the first decision of the court which totally stopped the old system of the full-time firefighters. Based on that, we need to calculate all hours when the firefighters or other staff are under the disposal of the employee. The second problem was between the city of Hamburg and fire brigade of Hamburg concerning some application of the exemption, because if you look to the working time directive, there is some exemption that the working time directive is not valid for the civil protection and and fire brigades. Yeah, but it's look like very easy. But upon the decision of the European Court of Justice was said that it's not valid, or you can take the exception just in the case of the emergency. It means you cannot plan the shifts and the system. You can use this exemption just in case of the emergencies. These two points was the crucial for the full-time firefighters. Since, I don't know, 4 years ago, it was in Belgium. It was the case with the name Matzak, which was the guy who put on the court, on the European Court of Justice, the problem, okay, when I am at home on phone, I am also on disposal for my employee, and I want to also calculate my standby hours at home to the working times. It was probably the first time when the working time directive affected the voluntary firefighters. The court decided, okay, that the case Matzak was connected to the response time and to some specific means which has for disposal. We have also some other decision from the European Court of Justice. It's also from the Germany, I think, is Stadt Offenbach, probably against the Germany, when the European Court of Justice decide that the voluntary firefighters which stay at home and the response time can be approximately 20 minutes or more, is able to manage their own free time. It means we have two different views on the same problems, and I am not sure if it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 25 minutes. It's enough for filling of this working time directive. And from our point of view, it's a very important start to discussion how to create the condition for not just for full-time firefighters, but also for volunteers, how create the condition for their work, because now in the Europe we have the problem with the aging of population. We have a problem that the young people are probably not willing to be volunteers or not be able to do something to the society, and we found a way how to motivate them. And one of the way is, for example, the special directive about the firefighters, or a special directive about the first responder, which can make the easiest way have to achieve it. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, I must add that what we say at the French Firefighters Federation, but also at the CTF, we have a very strong volunteers commission at the CTF. We say, we assess that volunteers in fire and rescue service are not workers. It's very important to separate these two type of activities. They are all firefighters, but volunteers are volunteers, and professionals are workers. How much time do we have to? Okay, we have 10 minutes. I will also give the floor at the audience to, maybe you have some question, but I have a second question to our distinguished panelists. How can we, or how do you in your countries face the recruiting and retaining question of volunteers? We agree that we need more and more volunteers, but we have to recruit them and to maintain and retain them in our fire services. Of course, the society is evolving. Young people don't want to have a long time involvement, but what first in Belgium, do you face these problems?
Ça va toujours en français?
Is it okay if I answer in French? Yes, it's better for me. So we are starting to ask ourselves this question because at some point we thought that in Belgium we were paying them, and then we realized it wasn't the right approach. So we're trying to think this through. How can we reignite the flame within volunteers? And so that is not just a financial incentive. So we're trying to recreate contact in the field. We're also trying to think of training courses. How can we break it down? We often do not make the distinction between training professionals and training volunteers. It's just how the training course is implemented that varies. And we're also trying to get more political support. Politicians tend to forget how important firefighters are. We're also working on communication. We're trying to see how we can work better on communication, put forward the added value for firefighting volunteers. We're also slowly but surely thinking of the issue of cadets. This is something that we're working on. We're trying to develop. We're seeing how this is done in France and in Germany. So we're trying to target young people, even younger, and we try to we try to pass on this flame so that people know what it means to be at the service of others, at the service of the population. So this is the message that we are trying to convey. And we're also trying to combine the professional and the volunteer trades, but we are only at the beginning of such reflections. I've heard really good examples. For example, short-term contracts, part-time firefighters. That could be the beginning of a solution for us. But we're only starting to think this through because this is very complex in terms of time and energy spent. 1 year invested in a volunteer has a return of 12 euros in life. And I think that is an important message to convey also at the European level, because working or having a volunteer means an investment, a financial investment.
En Belgique ou partout?
I'm sorry, but the question is asked outside of the mic. Yes, firefighters have the same status. But this is very different in Luxembourg. They have a professional status in Luxembourg. And maybe someone can add to this. But in Belgium, it's possible to be a professional in one rescue area and a volunteer in another rescue area.
Those professional firefighters also act as a volunteer in your different organizations. Petri, the same question. In Finland, what do you do to recruit more and to, more importantly, I think, to retain your firefighters, your volunteers firefighters?
First of all, I have to say that the question is quite funny, because if we, in other hand, we're talking about the volunteers, and then we have the working time directive. Are they workers or are they volunteers? I think it's actually quite big question, and the issue is that, for example, in Finland, there is a kind of problem that we don't define that who is actually their employer, who takes care of all the responsibilities of employers. And that is actually one question that we have to respond as well. The thing is that we have to solve these kind of issues before it becomes a real problem. And I would say that we have to also keep in our mind that not only consider of the everyday accidents, but also we have these long-lasting accidents. For example, we were discussing about these forest fires and so on. So we need more and more personnel who are probably not those part-timers or those voluntary firefighters, but we need also those pop-up volunteers. So we have to solve these issues in order to receive their help as well.
Thank you, Petri. Peter, now the same question, maybe in the point of view of FEU, but also in the Czech Republic. What should be the best way to recruit more and to retrain volunteers?
I need to say that because I belong to the full-time fire brigade, and I need to say that we have also the problems with the recruit of the new full-time firefighters, because we belong to the state administration, and we are not good employers on the employee market, because the salaries comparing in the public service to the private service are completely different. But what need to say our best employees are the voluntary firefighters, because I am sure that you will agree that the firefighters or the voluntary firefighters is the style of life, because you need to spend a lot of time with the friends, and it's probably the part of the life, and we know from the Czech Republic and probably in other countries it's like a part of the heritage, because our parents were the firefighters and the parents were also the firefighters. It means something like a tradition. And we need to be very flexible, because when I was the young firefighter, why I joined the voluntary fire service, because it was connected to the friendship and connected to the fun, because if the voluntary firefighters or the children will not have the fun, will not be the motivate to do something, we probably lost them. It means we need to be flexible, and we need to find a way how to catch the young generation to be a voluntary firefighters. Probably we need to move from the playground to the social media, Facebook, AI, and the different things. We need to be flexible.
Yes, flexibility to me is a key word for volunteers. I will give you the floor in one second. What I think also it's important to maintain or develop a small fire station, even if in a first economic approach, you may think that a small fire station costs a little bit because you have to maintain the building, but what is certain is that the proximity is the key to volunteers. And for example, you highlighted the importance of the young firefighters or junior firefighters, and if you have many small fire stations in the communities, it's more easy to develop this activity for juniors. Milan, please.
Thank you, Christoph. Milan Dobrovac, Justitia President. I will give an example which maybe it's not a question for you. Maybe we all together can put this question to EU one day. I'm EU-trained expert for civil protection mechanism, and I'm volunteer in the pool of experts in EU. And then there is a disaster, and they choose me and send me for 1 week to the mission, either within Europe or out of the Europe. And I worked there for 7 days, and they don't ask me about working time directive at all. So they should maybe first look into their processes, how it works, before they touch firefighters, from my side. Thank you.
You're right. Yeah. So I will launch my last question to our three panelists, but also to all of you. The question is, do you agree with us that it's very important to launch as soon as possible a specific European directive for civic involvement in civil protection?
Yes.
A short but very precise response. Petri.
Of course, we will support the initiative.
It's the same from my side, but I would like to say that we need to be a little wider. It means we need to speak about the first responders or something like this, because it's not just about the volunteers.
Yes. And now I ask the whole guests, do you agree that it's important to launch this specific, I'm sorry, yes, French say yes, with both hands. Somebody disagrees? Tom, you disagree?
Bonjour, Khadija Laroui.
Hello, Khadija Laroui. I've listened to all of these debates and all of these discussions. I read a lot about what is being done in the various reports, and what strikes me is that we are in contradiction between the volunteer engagement and the European directive on the working time. We shouldn't think this way. We should not confront them. We should go back to what is the essence of the working time directive, which is the protection of the individual. And for the voluntary firefighters, their commitment is given value by the EU that goes along this this angle, but it's putting a framework saying that volunteering should not replace lasting, sustainable, paid employment. So what I'd like to suggest is maybe framing this voluntary activity, which today in the French law doesn't have a framework. We say it within the civil protection. The volunteer is not a civil servant. He is not a worker. Who is he? What is his framework? And of course, I would like a specific European directive to come and give a framework to firefighting and to protect these individuals. I'm going to answer you in French. You are 1,000 times right. First of all, a volunteer should not replace a professional, but a volunteer should not be a full-time firefighter, because these are two very different things. I also think that we need a lot of flexibility, because we have volunteers that are already retired that could give more time. Yes, we need to set a limit somewhere, but we shouldn't be too rigid. A student who during his 2 months of summer vacation wants to go to the south of France and fight forest fires should be allowed to do so, even if he is going to spend 2 times 30 days over there. But yes, a volunteer is not a worker and should not be a worker.
In Deutschland ist es rechtlich eigentlich so, dass
in Germany, the legal framework says that volunteers are volunteer. That's very clear in the law, and it is now the European law that is showing us if the communes are starting to think about it and reinforce volunteering, because you don't have enough people who are 100% employed. So they're starting to pay, and they're trying to establish a relationship like you can find in a work contract. So yes, you need to promote volunteering. We are about to develop one system because of the people who are already retired. We've already developed this, but we don't have the same means as 5 years ago. It's more and more complicated, but we are here on a slippery slope. You need to find young people. We're starting at 6 years old with children and then youth. There are 130,000 youth, girls and boys in those ranks. And in Germany, this figure is increasing more and more. It is a good evolution, but all of this can be used when we can make these young people more enthusiastic and we can integrate them in a more voluntarily aspect.
I will just take one or two more questions in the room, and we will have to finish this second roundtable. Yes, Tom, you asked it. No, Tom first, and you will be.
Okay, I will be very short. Tom van Esbroek, also from Belgium, colleague from Francis, also CTF. I wanted to add something that Peter was saying. We have to be flexible, but I wanted to add we have to think out of the box. And I say this especially because my friend over there, Francis, he helped me almost 15 years ago to have some legislation about the volunteers. And the one thing that we were experiencing was a block of the existing volunteers and the responsible volunteers over there. I'm talking about 15 years ago. They really refused to reform. It was a revolution in their heads, and they weren't flexible enough to think about the future. And now I'm saying this from my heart, because I was also 25 years volunteering. So if we don't start with a new story from scratch, we will make the same mistakes. So it's not only about being flexible, it's also thinking out of the box. That was something I wanted to add.
Thank you, Tom. And in addition, I may add that in France we sometimes say that the worst enemy of a volunteer is a volunteer. So the last question, and I think we have two, but we can speak on pourra continuer demain matin encore bien plus loin.
We can go even further tomorrow morning.
I'm a French volunteer, and I am, to give you the context, working in a fire station where people from 16 countries are working as a firefighter, CERN, an international organization. And I can tell you how the advantage it could be to work together, and I am so happy today to be with you here, because I am totally convinced that this is the way to deal with that matter. Now we are seeing that each legal matters we have in a country can have consequences to the others. Finally, now we are fighting against the Nasdaq statement, and finally, probably tomorrow, French will have to face up something who will have consequences for the others. That means we have to work together. This is a strong point. In another way, I want also change something about us. We have to think about the others, but we have to think about ourselves also. And most of the time, lots of time, I have to correct it. Some problems are coming from our French volunteers or French professionals. And we have to deal also with that. We have to choose a way to deal. And for example, and I make the link with your previous discussion, how to deal with the new volunteers, how to let them join a fire station. And there is a fight in France, for example, between professional or old firefighters who are still in the model of a firefighter who is 1.8 meters tall and stronger than as stronger as it is possible. And now this is not anymore the reality. We have just to have French volunteers, and we don't need to be at 200 kilograms of muscles. And we have to deal also with the networks, social networks. This is not a way to decrease the amount of competencies we have. This is just a way to open up the fire station. And we have to deal with that also. It needs to be, in my opinion, a part of the job we are doing here, to change the point of view also internally. Thanks.
So I have to close now this room. Sorry for those which wanted to ask a question, but tomorrow morning we will continue our debates. Thank you so much, dear panelists, for your contribution. It was very important. The conclusion is, first we have to ask our European authorities to launch now this specific directive on civic involvement in civil protection. And we will be not 1 or 2 countries, but we will be at least 18 countries, and I hope some more will join, and we will go with CTF and FAU, so I am certain that we will get good results. Thank you, everybody, and I wish you good stay in Paris, and see you. We will work a little bit more, and I will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you. I have a good news. Now we have a coffee, how much time? 15 minutes of coffee break, so take the time to relax.
It's an honor and privilege for me to moderate our fourth and last panel discussion. Is a common European civil security force need? Personally, during the summer 2022, I was in charge to fight the most biggest wildfire in France southwest since 1949. It was a real opportunity to receive the European colleagues, but the most difficult thing was not to know the techniques and operational capabilities of these reinforcements. I hope that our different discussion will advance the topics. So let me introduce our different speakers. The first one, Milan Duraval, you are CITIF president, and you can share experience from our last big flood in Slovenia, where you were responsible for the international teams coming into your country.
Thank you. Yes, we talked today the main general challenges which face all rescue services, especially firefighters, due to those climate changes. To give you one example, in summer 2022, some of you were in Slovenia enjoying the fire competitions of CTIF, but in the same week the forest fire occurred. It was the biggest forest fire in the history of Slovenia. 1 year later, same period, summer, Slovenia, biggest flood ever occurred. So that's the consequences we will have to face in the future. I think you have the similar experiences from your countries or from your regions, but this was extreme. Okay, Slovenia is a little bit special because it is on junction of three big climate areas, Mediterranean, Alps, and Pannonia, so it's even more affected with those climate changes. And when such incident or such big disaster occurred, of course you don't have enough resources to manage the incident. That's the main idea behind the European Civil Protection Mechanism. But it's also only mechanism, you know. It's not, there is a lot of levels of this help. It has, this mechanism, some similarity also with CTIF. The main idea of mechanism of civil protection, European civil protection, was to first help within European Union. But now when we check the statistics for the last 15 or 20 years, the main activities of this mechanism were out of European Union, which is good. Of course, we are willing and equipped, and we can help also out of the same happened with CTF. The core member countries are the ones sitting here in this room, but since firefighters are open all the time, we also, of course, are open to accept other countries from other continents, and CTF has countries from other continents, and also connections with other continents, which is in this world now very needed. We all talked about that today, how it will develop within European Union, and wider we will see the world is developing, and we are facing a lot of challenges. So Slovenia last year faced these big floods, and we asked, of course, mechanism for help. I discussed by coincidence the Commissioner for Civil Protection at the moment is also Slovenian, so it's a little easier to talk with him, at least to me. And he visited us, and he said it was the most strange request come to European mechanism ever. The request was excavators and bridges. And they were very much afraid there will be no help offered, because it was so strange. But there the mechanism showed, and the countries, the humanity and willingness to help, that there was 14 countries replied and get to Slovenia to give this help to Slovenia. I was responsible for all international teams to accept them, to host them, and to arrange that everything worked well. Also, here are the differences. I'm also EU trained in mechanism in several levels. I was some years ago also classmate of Claire on some of the courses, or one of the courses, and it developed in a little bit. We all teach to this mechanism what the main standards should be. We also develop those modules. You all probably know those modules for forest firefighting with vehicles, ground forces, and aerial modules, and so on and so on. But we also teach on those courses to be self-sufficient, and if you come somewhere to help, not to press very much the host. And here we faced last year the floods, really different experience from one, I will not name the countries, from the countries which came completely self-sufficient to help us, didn't want, even they asked me, can we work longer than you, for the daylight, because people are needed help, we will not come back at 6, we want to work 3 hours more. I shouldn't tell this here because that was against the working time directive, but nevertheless, and some teams, even though they came with mechanism, were not so good organized. So we have still some work to do in the future also in this area. Now the new small projects are made. The European Union is working on some teams pre-positioned and pre-prepared for, especially for forest fires in the summer, and I think we have still some challenges. Generally, operational staff for European mechanism is our firefighters, because the main activities are user activities and forest fires activities, and if we start to count, the main force of mechanism, operational force, are European firefighters. Maybe that for start, and we can develop it later. Thank you.
Thank you, Milan. Let me introduce you now, Kemilin Zvolt. Yeah.
Thank you. Just to make a clarification, that's a good friend of mine. Luckily, the picture that was with the registry sheet was me in the gray uniform, so I was let into the building, but so no mistake there. Yes, it is, but because we have the same name, but that's the only reason. Okay. Thank you for the organizers. A big thank you. To the French Firefighters Association and also the German Firefighters Association for pushing this matter, which I believe has been pushed for 5 years, because this is not something new. What is new is that we refer to the working time directive, but I don't think we are targeting the right piece of legislation, because within the EU, the top under the Treaty on the European Union is the regulation level. And that's what we should focus on, because there's the employment regulation, and we should tackle that instead of tackling each directive that might affect volunteers. So I think we are a bit misfocused, and I would like to bring that back. ECJ, the European Court of Justice, had no option to do anything else or to reach or any other conclusion or to see the wider picture, because that's a court. It can only see legislative pieces of act of the same level. If we fight with a national law or an EU directive, that's something he could not look at legally. So we should target, as we've started 4 or 5 years ago in CTF Volunteer Commission, that we should have a volunteer directive for the EU. All volunteers, not just firefighters, and I'm just quote-unquote just firefighters, but first responders, as was rightly pointed out. It's a much more general. I'm grateful for using the term, because I think we have a lot of misunderstandings with the terms. I personally don't like the distinction volunteer professional. The counterpart of professional is unprofessional, not the volunteer. The counterpart of volunteer is carrier firefighter, somebody who is paid, unpaid. If we are not using these distinctions, we give room for a lot of misinterpretation and underestimation of our capacities. Again, I'm not really happy with the term sometimes used civic and civil. Civic is the counterpart of public, the state, and that might work. But civil protection is, at least in Hungary, but as I see it, DG ECHO runs the EU CPM. Civil protection at the EU level, in my opinion, is settled. And it is settled in all EU member states. But the problem is civil protection is not there within 3 hours, not even 6 hours. Sometimes maybe 1 or 2 officials are there in the first hour, the second. Who is there? It's always the first responders. 99% of the time it's firefighters, whether they be volunteer or carrier firefighters. They are the ones who are there on the spot. And I think we should target our efforts at raising their esteem, their public esteem, and also their legal status. And if we have a volunteer regulation at the EU level, that will take care of all volunteer first responders. And yes, they should not be paid, but we could still, in some countries, use compensation of expenses. That's a different issue. That's not a pay. That is paid of the costs incurred in carrying out an activity that should have been carried out by the state, or if it's a larger event, by the EU. So I think we should target our efforts in a different direction, if I may suggest so. I was also glad to hear specific data that €1 spent on volunteers is a €10 return, 12. In Hungary, we had this calculation 10 years ago. €1, well, we have foreign, but still, 1 unit of currency is 5 times, just in terms of money, because what the state gives, it is supplemented by municipalities, local businesses, or even private individuals, and even some undertaking that we go cut trees, we do some lifting, whatever, and it is doubled by the actual cost of labor, which is for free for the community. But thus, I think we should go to this compensation phase that, yes, we should have all our expenses covered, meaning uniforms, the training, the practices, exercises, the missions, the interventions. It should not cost a volunteer a single euro cent that he is being trained volunteer, and the training of the volunteer should be the same as the training of the carrier firefighter, because the hazards are the same, the PPE required is the same, so it should be cemented somewhere that these are the same criteria for a volunteer and a carrier firefighter, or in more general, a first responder. And just another addition to the previous debate. I'm really happy that in the last 2 years, I'm also the chairman for a disaster management working group under Priority Area 5. It's a long word, but anyway, it's the EU has 4 macro regions: the Baltic Sea region, the Adriatic, the Alps, and the Danube region. And Danube is the largest. It has a program for environmental risks, and underneath that we were lucky to have a special working group for disaster management, in which out of the 14 Danube countries we also already have 10 members. And we are working on EU projects, quite a few of them, involving the area, and we have letters of intent with the CTIF Volunteer Commission signed 2 years ago, and just a bit more than a year ago with the Baltic Sea region. And we are hoping to extend this to the Alps and the Adriatic, that we know what's happening where, and then it might be something building towards the common European. I wouldn't use the civil security, because we are not an oppression force. It's not the police, it's not the military. That's the only organized, uniformed corps that are for the people and not for the oppression of the people. We are just there to help them in an organized way. So I understand that we are under the general security term, but it's more fire and rescue, fire safety, which we should concern ourselves with, and distinguish it as a pure security force which we are not, and I don't think we would want to be security force, but we do need a common force for helping wider regions, cross-border regions, and hopefully not, but eventually might be the case for macro regions or even at the whole European level. So yes, there is a need for a common force dealing with fire safety in a general term. This was my addition to the debate, if you allow me to do that.
Thank you, Colonel. So now, Wilfried Stefik, you are Head of Research, Resources, Innovation and Forecast Department of our National College of Fire Service Officers. What could you tell us about your contribution to European projects, in particular the knowledge network and practitioners networks?
The French National Fire Officer Academy is located in the south of France, in Aix-en-Provence, just near Marseille, and we work with Entente Valable, the other academy, and both academies have research departments, and these two research centers are working for the French civil protection. And we are involved in the European project, and there is different type of European project interested for a common civil protection force. We are involved in the research projects funded by the DG ECO, and especially for the knowledge network of the UCPM. We were involved in the AFAN project. In this project, we worked for forest fire, and we created a part of this network, and we still are connected with a channel on Telegram, so it works, and I really think it's interesting to create those networks and be active for the civil protection. But there isn't only a project financed by the DG ECO, as we were involved also in a European project financed by the DG RTD and or DG Home, and those European projects aims to create a network of practitioners, and within this network I was in contact with Peter. We and also in other projects with Tom, and with this project we work on thematic working groups, and that's also something interesting for the European civil protection. We have to talk together to understand common capability gaps and identify future common capability gaps. So that's the first point I wanted to say. We have different stakes. Those are diplomatics and also economics. And European project is a very good idea, and we have to think together. The second part I wanted to say, it has been mentioned by the General Director early this afternoon. It's the preparation of European modules, and last year France hosted European modules for forest fire, and in our academy we hosted those modules. Unfortunately, modules from Slovenia couldn't come because of the floods, but we hosted modules from Austria, Romania, and Poland. And it was very interesting because we worked together during 2 months, and it was also very interesting. It was a mutual learning. Those modules wanted to know how we fight fires in the south of France. but we had to know how they work, and something very simple. There were ground forest fire fighting units, but without vehicle. And in France, we use those modules with vehicle, and it was difficult to know how we could use those modules. And I have to say that in July, it was very difficult, and the incident commander couldn't really use those modules. It was easier in August with the Romanian module, because it was firefighting modules with vehicle. So I think this year, in 2024 summer, we will host again European module, and I hope that this year we will continue to learn how we work together, and I'm quite sure that it will be better to employ those modules. And that's also why I say that we need to work together, and it could be interesting to have this common force.
Thank you very much. Claire Kowaleski, you are a colonel of French firefighters and you expert, so could you share with us a state of play of the existing program to increase the level of interoperability of our force?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you to have invited the European Commission at this summit. I think it's quite interesting and quite good to listen also to your feedback, to feed our thoughts for the future. I think it's very important, so thanks a lot for that. I just would like to react first on some things I've heard now. Yes, for sure, civil protection, first responders will be always the national forces and national resources, no matter the status. So this, I can more than agree on this point. But however, at EU level now, we have more and more resources to offer. The European Civil Protection Mechanism has been created more than 20 years ago, in 2021. And now it means that we have more and more resources to share. What is also quite important as a date, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, civil protection was part of DG Environment. And now civil protection is a dedicated Directorate General, meaning the importance at EU level. Also meaning the importance that could be done also of this topic in countries. In many countries, I can see, we have seen Sweden, now you have a minister for civil defense. We have we have in Greece a minister dedicated to civil protection. We have some secretary of state in some countries, in Romania, in Portugal. And the level of involvement of these people in this thematic, obviously, is quite important compared to some countries where the organization, civil protection, is under, I don't know, Minister of Interior or this type of things. So I think it's something that also that needs to be discussed and think also at national level, because more and more countries are shifting to this concept. Italy now for 1 year has also a minister dedicated to civil protection, just to also for thoughts for everybody. And so EU, we have a dedicated commissioner with the rank of a minister. I think it's something that is quite important to remind for this type of things. So do we need a common European civil protection security force? I think we already need to analyze what we already have. Indeed, we said first responder will be the first level of response and forever. For this, it will never change. But after the solidarity is now working for more than 20 years, and for more than 20 years, in fact, more than by 700 times, the mechanism has been activated, meaning that by 700 times, some countries came to help each other. We never had any emergencies without any response. So it means that the solidarity is here. However, it needs to be organized. It's an organized solidarity. It's not, yes, it needs to be organized, as it has been said. maybe not harmonized totally, as we said, with exactly the same protocols, but we need to work hard together. And it's what is done now for a few years. And it's how it works. Just to give you some example of resources available, just to try to work all together, we have some modules, I would say some big teams, available to be deployed, pre-committed for any deployment. We have now 130 teams dedicated for floods, for forest firefighting, for Siberian mission, for some emergency medical teams. So really very, very different type of profiles and response possible. So meaning that at any time we could have already more than 5,000 firefighters, because most of them are firefighters, even if I should say more rescuers, because sometimes it could be different profiles, it could be some forestry services, for example. But meaning that now, if needed, more than 5,000 people are able to work together. And for being a module, they need to be certified, meaning they need to follow a path to be sure that they will all be able to work together. So it's what I call also the organized solidarity. It's not only I would like to come, and this, of course, it's always well accepted, but it's a bit what you said. So teams are coming, but we don't know exactly what they can do, what they can't. But at least if they follow this process, and if you have in your countries some people trained to host them, because it's also one of the weaknesses most of the time. It's not the incoming teams, and it has been said also. You need to be able to host these teams when they're coming, to know what you can ask to them, to know what you can't ask, and all these type of things. So I think it's also something that needs to be done nationally. And there are some existing trainings on this point, so I will more than invite you to go to train and to organize after some national training on these topics. I think it's quite important. Other things that could be useful to increase the interoperability, to the exchange and all the things, we have the Exchange of Expert program. That is a program financed at 100% by the European Commission, where more than 2,500 firefighters mainly have participated. Meaning you can go in any country, even more, you can go in 52 countries, because we are also including the neighboring countries, so northern, I would say northern Africa, but also eastern countries, to work on topics. For example, you would like to know how their crisis center is organized. You could have a tour financed by the European Union at 100% to go in different countries. Or if you would like to stay for 4 months, I don't know, in Hungary to see how they are working on a specific topic, it's something that could be done. It's part of the Erasmus. I think it could be one of the tools of the Erasmus program that you would like to develop. It's a bit already how we are organizing, how we are calling this program. So it exists. Do not hesitate to use it, to share, to learn from the others, to try to find a new solution for you. Another example, it has been a bit described by Wilfried, the prepositioning program. It will be the 3rd year that we are organizing a prepositioning program of firefighters mainly from Northern Europe in Southern Europe. It was the initial objective during the forest fire season. It came from the terrible fires in Greece we had in 3 years ago now, where you had some firefighters coming from Poland, crossing Europe or from Germany, also going to Greece in the middle of the summer, with trucks not appropriated, with difficult conditions. So we said we need to go one step more. We need to be already on site when needed. And the idea behind was also to train, to prepare in the light of the climate change, because you have talked about the light of the climate change, prepare countries from Northern Europe to this type of risk, to be for sure more efficient when they will go next time in Gironde, in your country, but also to be aware of different techniques that could exist to prepare themselves for in a few years when they will be affected. We had someone from Finland, Peri, I don't remember, I don't see where you are, but for example, Finland now every year is going to this prepositioning program. So this year we will have more than 550 firefighters for the moment. It's still possible to go if Germany would like to go. It's an option to participate. Yes. We'll have firefighters proposition in Portugal, in Spain, in France, and in Greece once more. So it's also a way to create this Erasmus. Erasmus is not only, it's a global different programs that we can put together, and I think it's quite good. Different other things, we need to work together, as I said, but maybe not to have all a same way of working, because if we are talking to forest fires, for example, it was one of the topics. Forest fires in Sweden are not the same than in Spain. So obviously techniques will be different. But obviously we need to have all the same objectives and to know how to integrate ourselves. So that's why we need to be careful when we say, and it's the vision of the European Union, to say, okay, look, we need to work on the same way. It's maybe not adapted. And I think also we need to think about this from a taxpayer point of view. Because it will create new trainings, maybe, and different type of things. And we also need to have this in mind when we are talking about this working together. Let's try to find for the moment the common position, how we can work together from an efficient way, but also from a taxpayer point of view. I think it's quite important. I will just take an example for this taxpayer point of view. It's something that we can hear sometimes. We had some discussion with some of our Belgian colleagues about this a few months ago about this topic. You have only firefighters in this room. Let's talk about couplings. You will say, okay, look, when I'm going in France, I don't have the good couplings. In fact, there is already something in the legislation. 17 countries are already using the stored coupling. Do we have to ask to France to change all the couplings in France for houses and to have some stored standards? It will cost a lot. For how many times it will be needed? So our position is more to ask to the countries not using these most common couplings used to have some adapters. It's 100 euros. Imagine if you have to change all couplings in France, not only in the fire trucks, but also in all the buildings, everywhere. It's a no sense. So that's why when we are developing some program, we are also thinking about with this approach, not saying, okay, we need to harmonize everything, to find the best things. What could I say? I have already talked too much, no? I have a few minutes? I can, because I can continue for hours. So what could I say in addition? So we have talked about the modules. Just for you also to know that EU has invested 3.1 billion euro for developing capacities available for all countries. It's what we are calling the Rescue program. So meaning it could be equipment, materials, it could be ventilators. We had the problem with the COVID and all the things. But it's also aircraft for forest firefighting. EU is going to finance 14 aircraft, type Canadair. The first countries have signed the first contract with the company, the manufacturer, last week or 2 weeks ago. So Greece has signed for 7 Canadair, and Croatia for 2, and some of them are 100% financed by European Union. And other will come when countries will be able to sign the contract, as well as helicopters also. We are also financing some helicopters due to the climate change, this type of thing that we are doing. So global budget, 3.1 billion, quite impressive budget. Last things, indeed we need to be prepared. 2023, we had at the same time activation in Slovenia for floods, but also activation in Greece for forest fires. So 15 times last year we had activation due to severe weather in Europe. So indeed, now we are more and more focusing, it's true, on new crises, new type of crises. We have the war in Ukraine. We have sometimes hybrid attacks, hybrid threats. We have migration flows that we are also managing at DG ECO. But I think it's quite important to never forget that the climate change and the natural disaster will still be the base. And just to finish,
The last one.
The last one, you are all invited to the Civil Protection Forum. It's the 4th and 5th of June in Brussels. And obviously, all this topic will be more developed. So, and you will find the website. You just type Civil Protection Forum. It's for free. You are more than welcome.
Thank you, Kia. We just have a few minutes for 1 or 2 questions from the audience.
Thanks so much. Well, to sum up, I think we're talking about, finally, about sustainability of operations, integration. I think one solution could be standardized agreements, and the capacity and capacity building of modules, as the representative of ENSOF said, and we must focus on that issues more than a specific directive over the mechanism. But Claire, I think, has made a point about something very important. Climate change is obvious that is impacting in the management of emergencies and crises, but we must have a wide view or wider view about the problem. The real problem, I think, will be the management of this crisis. The charge or the weight of the response will be always, as others said, on the first responders. And I think the building capacity must be focused on management, assessment, and technical issues. Without, that is not in, again, so focus on reducing on building capacities in response, on models of response, but I think that the weight of the system will be proved in management and coordination and integration and those tools. I don't know why is your opinion, or what do you think about this?
On this point, in fact, you have also some trainings organized, because as you said, it's good to have teams and modules already prepared, but you have to know how to manage this. And there is all a training path to be able to work together. So once more, in each country you have what we are calling a national training coordinator. If you don't know who is your national training coordinator, you can go on the website of the European Union, Civil Protection European Union. You will find national training coordinator, and you will have someone who will be able to tell you how to learn a bit more how to manage all these European resources. But yes, managing these resources, it's a very important point. I fully agree.
If I may add to this, just coming from the couplings, I think the right approach would be accredited certification, standardized training, standard procedures, but harmonized equipment. We should not pressure countries to change their systems. Just find the easy interfaces. For example, for wildfires, we figured out it's pretty much the same equipment to some extent as for floods, pumps, high-capacity pumps, elevation. You just need a mobile tank of 1,000 or 2,000 liters into which one unit can put, and whatever the French are using, we know what you're using, or Romania or Serbia, some different, they can use their own suction hoses from there, and we don't have to mess with each other's couplings and other specifications. That's just harmonization. Standardization should come at the level of the training and the operational procedures. Sorry.
It's my pleasure to greet all of you, especially our host, President of France Firefighter Association and Germany Firefighter Association. You forgive me if I continue on my language Croatia and with translator, because my English is not so beautiful.
Okay.
Ja mislim da se mi vatrogasci moramo organizirati. Pozdravljam ovu inicijativu za ovaj sastanak.
I think, despite of everything that has been said, that we firefighters have to organize ourselves.
Mi moramo biti partneri Europskoj komisiji.
We have to be partners to the European Commission.
Svaka čast civilnoj zaštiti.
We honor all the efforts of civil protection.
A to su ljudi birokrati, općih znanja.
These are administrative people and people who have a wide spectrum of knowledge.
Ali mislim da predstavnici vatrogastva
But the representatives of firefighters
moraju biti pregovarači sa Europskom komisijom.
have to, in future, have talks with the European Commission.
I tu mislim primarno na predsjednika Vatrogasnog saveza Njemačke i Francuske kao dvije najjače države.
And the negotiation process shall be led by the most strong countries in European Union, the German and the French firefighters.
Koji znaju šta je vatrogastvo,
who know what firefighting is,
koji se ne trebaju učiti šta je vatrogastvo,
who don't need to be learned what firefighting is.
I oni znaju što vatrogastvima treba.
We know and they know what firefighters need.
Mi smo svi članice Europske unije.
We are all members of European Union.
I najmjerodavniji, najkompetentniji su zapovjednici u vatrogastvu.
And the most competent are the firefighting commanders.
Mi obavljamo 80% aktivnosti koje ljudi imaju.
And all first responders and rescue activities are done by the firefighters.
Ja sam vatrogasac 48 godina.
I'm a firefighter for nearly 48 years.
Bio sam i zapovjednik lokalni, regionalni i državni.
I have been a local, regional and national commander.
Ali baš zbog jednog lošeg odnosa prema vatrogascima.
But because we found a misunderstanding of firefighters on all levels,
Ušao sam i u politiku.
I have joined the politics to change it.
I napredovao sam i gradonačelnik i župan i sad sam potpredsjednik Hrvatskog parlamenta.
I have been a mayor and I have be a county director and now I am vice president of the Croatian parliament.
I smatram i razgovarao sam s Ursulom von der Leyen.
And I have been talking with Ursula von der Leyen,
koja je bila kod nas u posjetu.
who has been in a visit to us,
Vatrogascima u Splitu.
to us firefighters in the local counties Split region.
Izrazio sam ovo naš stav da je loše da vatrogascima upravljaju civili, ljudi koji ne znaju to.
And it is a bad thing that civil people and administrative people are leading the whole system in European Union.
Vatrogasna organizacija je 180 godina stara u Europi.
The firefighting organization is the oldest one, more than 160 years old in Europe.
Ima generacije školovanih i stručnih ljudi.
It has generations of wonderful educated firefighters.
Tako da nama ne treba niko dodatno učiti nas.
We don't have nobody additional who has to learn us.
Mi moramo odmah nakon izbora evropskih.
We have, and as we have agreed, immediately to address ourselves to the European Union.
Sa ovog skupa u vlasti to ova dva predsjednika najvećih asocijacija.
And we suggest from this gathering that we give all our sign to these two firefighting organizations and nations.
Da se zatraži sastanak sa predsjednikom Europske komisije.
That they demand a very strong meeting with the president of the European Commission.
I da se tim ljudima koji to ne znaju kako vatrogastvo uopće funkcionira.
And the people that don't understand the firefighting system.
Objasniti sustav i objasniti mogućnost vatrogastva.
Explain the system of firefighting and how the system of firefighting works.
Mi sad ovdje govorimo, uvaženi predstavnici civilne zaštite, kako će oni nas naučiti, kako ćemo mi pomagati jedni drugim.
We now heard from many people how civil protection is learning us how we will learn from each other.
Ja 40 godina sudjelujem u sustavu.
More than 40 years I'm taking part in the system.
Kojim je temeljno suradnja vatrogasca međusobno.
The fundament is the coordination and the management between firefighters.
Znači, to je lekcija koju su vatrogasci već zaboravili, koliko godina je znaju.
This is lesson that we for 40 and I for 40 years learn and we have learned it.
Znači,
We don't have to be learned something that we have on our basis.
Mi smo organizirali vatrogasne zajednice baš zbog toga što se vatrogasci udružuju.
We have organized firefighting associations, but because we have a long-lasting history that we are joining these organizations from the basic to the top.
Moja zemlja je mediteranska zemlja koja ima stotine požara otvorenog prostora.
My country is a Mediterranean country with hundreds of wildland fires.
Mi imamo potpisane ugovore sa susjednim zemljama.
We have agreements with neighboring countries.
I unaprijed već definirani postupci pomoći jedni drugima.
In advance we have a coordination how we will deal with help to each other.
Mi vatrogasci to znamo raditi.
We firefighters know that.
Zato moramo ponuditi evropskoj vlasti.
We have to offer the European government
Ono što mi radimo.
That what we do on our daily basis.
A da ne prenose tim ljudima koji su najodgovorniji u Europi.
And that we don't transfer it to these people who are responsible in Europe.
Znanje ljudi koji to nikad nisu radili.
Knowledge from people who have never done this job.
Mislim da treba iskoristiti ovaj naš skup.
And we think that this gathering shall be used.
Upravo da ovu dvojicu najjačih ljudi u vatrogasnoj organizaciji.
That these most strong organizations in Europe
ovlastimo da razgovaraju sa budućom vlasti Evropske komisije.
Give the power that they negotiate with others with the European Union.
Sve drugo je srljanje u magli.
All others is something that we do not see as a result.
Jer su rješenja za to vatrogasci imaju stoljeća.
Because results for all we have heard, hundreds of years we have done these results.
Znači obrazovanje, znanje,
education, knowledge, technique,
i načini komunikacije.
And the way of communication and between each other.
Za sve vrste katastrofa.
For all kinds of incidents that we are able to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your participation. So I have to precise that we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. 32 Rue Breguet at the French Firefighters House. Thank you very much. Yes, and as we said in France, le bar est ouvert.
Just before finishing.